G'day everyone, and welcome to our remote learning webinar number 8, the Inclusive Classroom Part 2. My name is Troy Waller. I am the accessibility lead for Microsoft Education. I'm also what's called a learning delivery specialist, which is just a fancy Microsoft way of saying I am a former teacher. I've had more than 20 years in education, and I spent 16 of those in schools, and about half of those were actually spent in the early years of education, you know, between prep or kindergarten and grade 2. So the idea of the inclusive classroom, though, is something that's very close to my heart. It's something that actually gets me up in the morning, to be honest. When I'm running a webinar, whether it's face-to-face, workshop or a webinar like this, I really like what I do in this space because I feel that Microsoft's got some really good tools to make a real difference to kids and to students. I'm going to invite Jess off mute and let her introduce herself. She's going to be handling the Q&A today. Jess?
Hi there, thanks Troy. So my name's Jess Erhardt. I'm part of Microsoft's retail store team based in Sydney. But at the moment we're on pause because we're all working from home and working remotely and adjusting to this new world of work. So for today I'm here to support Troy. Any questions that you have, feel free to pop in the chat window. I'll either answer them in chat or we'll raise them up to Troy. So feel free to light up that chat window with any questions that you have.
Excellent, thanks for that, Jess. So, as I said, this is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I'd really like you to make sure that you grab the links and everything that I'm going to share today, because especially the slides and the recording, and I would really love you to spread this around because I know it's going to make a difference. But the cool thing about this stuff is, yes, we're looking at it from a remote learning context. We know some schools have already gone back, some states, I should say, have already gone back to school, and it may not be that long before we in Victoria are heading back as well. But nevertheless, a lot of these tools are still awesome, even outside of that sort of remote learning context. But nevertheless, we're certainly going to look at it from a remote learning environment today. On that note, aka.ms/Microsoft Remote Learning. This is our landing page and launching page for everything to do with remote learning in the Australian context from Microsoft Australia. So please go in there and have a look. And there's also, most importantly, there's a Q&A section in there where you can actually reach out and ask your questions. And there's some real people on the end of those chat links, and they'll be able to give you the help that you need. So if you're watching this as a recording, please visit that link there, and you can go in and ask any questions you want, and they'll field them back to me or somebody else, and we'll certainly get back to you with some answers. Okay.
Troy, just before we kick off, are we able to switch on the captions?
You know what? The captions is actually an ability that they can do themselves. So captions are on. So when they came into the meeting today, there would have been the ability to actually turn on the captions. So have a look and see if that's available to you. If not, then I apologise most sincerely, and I will make sure that there are captions on the recordings when I make those available to you. Okay, so here's our agenda. Actually, that's not our agenda because that's the agenda from the last workshop, which I forgot to update. Apologies. So what we're going to do today, though, is we're definitely going to jump in and look at support for writing, and we're also going to jump in and look at support for maths. So our last webinar was all about immersive reader, a little bit of immersive reader in here today as well. But our last webinar, if you missed part 1, that's all about reading support. Today is all about writing support and also about support for maths. So you can see there on the screen now, our mission is to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. You can see I've underlined again every person because we want to make sure that, you know, our responsibility as a company is to use technology, produce tools that are the best to serve you, right? And to serve people that need that little bit of extra help. So it's right on point with our mission statement. So education.microsoft.com. That is our Microsoft Educator Centre. I'm going to take you in and show you that. Again, that's education.microsoft.com. And this is the landing page for the Educator Centre. You need to make sure that you sign in using your school email address and password. So please go ahead and do that. That way it will keep a record of everything that you do. Now, the cool thing about this website is that we have individual courses. we have groups of courses as well, pulled together in what's called learning paths, and remembering that it will record everything that you do, and you've got a little sheet that you can print off there, an audit sheet which will show everything that you've done and that the times that you did those, etc. All right, so it's really good to demonstrate that if you need to demonstrate that to the VIT, for example, or a teacher registration board if you're outside of Victoria. Now have a look here. When I click on learning paths, I want to show you something really cool in here. If I type in inclusivity, you can see here that there's three specific learning paths that are focused on equity, inclusivity and accessibility. The inclusive classroom specialisation, inclusive classroom foundation, and creating a digitally inclusive learning community. Now this one here, inclusive classroom specialisation, has some awesome courses in it. Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom is fantastic. It's actually one of the, you can use that as a resource for everything that we're going to be covering in this series of webinars, the Inclusive Classroom. But there's some other ones in there as well. So I really want you to jump in and have a look at that. You do get points, you do get badges, and then of course remembering that it will record everything. But look at that, it's 9 hours worth of special needs PD. And for those of us that are in Victoria, you know that you have to tick that box and say you've done some special needs PD in the year. Well, here's a way that you can actually hit 9 hours worth of PD if you need to. So go in and have a look at that. All right, let's keep moving. Now, this is the Microsoft 365 landing page, the Office 365 landing page, which is www.office.com. So please jump in there and have a look at that. Again, www.office.com. Now, signing in, if you're outside of the Department of Education in Victoria, you just use your usual username, email address and password. If you are from inside the department, two things. If you're using EduMail, if you're still on EduMail, then you need to go in as your TO number at education.vic.gov.au. So your TO number, whatever that is, 0945, whatever yours is, at education.vic.gov.au. So that's what we need to use if we are still on EduMail. However, if you are already on education.vic.gov.au, that is, your email address has been migrated over to Exchange Online. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. But if you've got an education.vic.gov.au email address, you can use that. You don't have to use your TO number. If you're also at a school that maybe has their own Office 365 environment, their own Microsoft 365 environment, and you're using your own email address, so it's a school-specific email address, try signing in with that first. If it doesn't work, then go back to your TO at education.vic.gov.au. Okay, so that's how we get signed in. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Office before we get into everything else, because there's a few things that I want to clarify so that you can make sure that you've got everything you need to be accessing everything that I'm sharing with you today. So the first thing I want to talk about is Office, right? So we have Office 2019 is the most recent release of Office. Some of you might be using Office 2016. Some of you may in fact be on Office 2019. I just want to stress that if you're looking today at the things that I'm sharing, you're wondering, why haven't I got that? It's probably because you're on an older version of Office. Now, I'm going to talk you through in a moment how to get the greatest, most up-to-date version of Office. But for now, if you do find when you start to look at this stuff later that yours isn't doing it, it's probably because you're on an older version of Office. Now, we have Office in the cloud, which we call Office 365. So that's Office through the browser. There's a difference between Office in the browser and Office fully installed on your machine, okay? Office in the browser, you don't need to install any software. You just need your username or your email address and your password, and then you get in through the browser and you can use Word Online and PowerPoint in the browser and all those kinds of things as well, all right? The cool thing is though, Office 365 will talk to the full version of Office installed on your machine. Now, there is another version of Office, another version of the fully installed software down on your machine, and it's called Microsoft 365 apps. It used to be called Office 365 Pro Plus, but now it's called Microsoft 365 apps. Now, I want to make sure that you have got access to this, because unlike Office 2016 or Office 2019, which do not change, what I mean is they are the same pieces of software that you installed however many months ago, however many years ago, Microsoft 365 apps will actually update via features. So that means when new features are rolled out to Office, you'll get those pretty much right away. And the department, and probably your school too, if you're outside of the department, has actually purchased 5 free copies of this for every student and every teacher. Okay, so it's really easy to get. So what I want to do is I just want to take you back into my Office start page over here. So here I am at office.com. What I need to do to access this free software, and this is true for students as well as teachers, is that we come to office.com, we sign in with our email address and password on the machine that we want to install the software into, and then we come up here to this little button here, Install Office. Click that, and there's those Office 365 apps, okay, or those Microsoft 365 apps. So you can click on that and it will download onto the machine that you're using. So you can steer your students to do that. You can do that. It's the same for a PC and a Mac. Okay, so 5 free copies for PC and the Mac. So you can put it on your home machine, your work machine, your partner's machine. You can put it on anyone that you're related to's machine. You're not breaking any rules. Okay, so that's what we do to get the latest, greatest version of Office. So again, we're on the machine that we want to install it on. We come to office.com. We come up here to this Install Office button and we click on that and follow the instructions and it will install. If you hit an error, that is, it can't install, you may need to uninstall your current version and then go through this. But for most of us, it will just write straight over the top and you'll have the latest, greatest version of Office there. Okay, so again, the reason why that matters is because there's going to be features and things that I'm going to show you today. You're going to go back to your version of Office and say, hey, it's not working, it's not there on mine, but this is how you get this version of Office. All right, now remember, I'm going to also share the links with you on how to download this video. So if you forget, you can go back and use this as a reference. Okie dokie. All right, let's keep moving. All right, so as I said in the last webinar, and remembering again, this is part 2 of what could be, in fact, a 3-part series, but it's still part 2. So I'm just going to go back over what it means to us when we talk about the inclusive classroom. So at Microsoft, when we talk about the inclusive classroom, we want to engage every learner in a diverse K-12 classroom. Now here's some of these stats. Look at this. Up to 50% of instructional time can be lost to managing students' needs, including assistive technology. These are Australian stats, by the way. Virtually 100% of schools in Australia have students with identified learning difficulties enrolled, right? So this is not just a, some of us issue, it's an all of us issue as teachers. Almost 20% of students in Australian schools require inclusive education support, all right? So that's nearly 1 in 5, right? So that's every single class again. And then look at this, in New South Wales, almost 30% of New South Wales students are from a language background other than English. I'm sure that the stats are very similar right across the country. All right, so inclusive education. We want to give more students personalised access to their curriculum. We want to optimise educator time, really important. We want to make sure that the teacher is not bogged down with other things, or the technology being another thing to deal with, rather that the technology is going to assist the student and therefore free up the educator. And then we want to improve learning outcomes as well. So we want to increase the student independence. We want the students to experience a reduction of stigma. Same software, same computer as everybody else in the classroom, so they're not standing out. Again, we want to make sure that educators use these tools to be empowered to engage every learner. And then lastly, we know that, education institutions, schools, etc., want to be seen as positive places that promote equity and inclusion. And by including these tools, that's exactly what we do. Even more so in a remote context. Okay, because these tools are actually going to enable us in a school environment to give that student independence. But when we're not even in the same room as the student, it's really important that they're able to access the curriculum, even more so. So looking at the inclusive classroom, I said this last time, Microsoft focuses in these 4 areas. Reading support, so that was our last webinar, right? So we looked at Immersive Reader and all the cool things you can do with Immersive Reader. Writing support is what we're going to look at today. Okay, we're going to jump into writing support and see some of the cool tools that are going to help students with their writing, and math support as well. All right, we're going to spend a little bit of time. We're definitely not going to have time for speaking and listening today, but maybe we'll come back for a third webinar and look at that, because there's some really cool stuff we can do in that space. Okay, so let's jump into writing support. So the first thing I want to talk to you about today is dictate. Okay, dictation or speech to text is available across multiple platforms and multiple tools in the Microsoft stack. So it allows students to speak into the device, and the written text will appear in the program. And it's a quick and easy way to create drafts, outlines, notes, or just get thoughts out into text. So as you know, you're going to have a lot of students that have trouble, whether it's a fine motor problem, holding the pen, or even typing. Bringing the ability for them to actually dictate their thoughts and get their thoughts out onto the page is just, a game changer for a lot of the students that you're possibly working with. So what I want to do is I want to show you first dictate in Word. I want to show you what that looks like, but it is across other tools as well. So dictate is available in Word Online, and it's also available in Word for the Windows 10 app, right? So if you have that Office 365 apps that we talked about before, it used to be called 365 Pro Plus, then you're going to have no issues accessing dictate. But if you're using an older version, like I said, it might not be there, but still you can definitely access it through Word Online. So let's go in and have a little bit of a look here. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to show it to you in Word Online first. But remembering, as I said, it does exist in the full version of Word for Windows 10 as well. So I'm going to jump up here. I've got a Word document, Word Online document that I've opened already. Now you can see over here the dictate button exists right here. If I click on that drop down, I have the ability here to dictate. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click that dictate button. When I do, you'll see a little red light appear, and that means I can start to talk. Last Christmas holidays, I played with my puppy Brandy, full stop. I sprayed water at her, full stop. I wrestled her and I played soccer with her, full stop. We sat down together, comma. We said jokes to each other, comma. We played and played until I had to go into the house and eat lunch, full stop. New line. I said to her, comma, open quotes, "You are amazing!" exclamation mark, close quotes. All right, so how do we go there? Last Christmas holidays, I played with my puppy Brandy. I sprayed water at her, wrestled, played soccer. Yep, pretty good. All right, now you can see there, except for when I said new line. All right, except for when I said new line, I'd have to manually change that, but there it is, okay? So a moment ago, you were looking at that and probably thinking, oh, this isn't really working. It's a bit slow, but actually we're connected to the internet, and we're using an artificial intelligence that is actually listening, okay? And then it's, taking a little bit of time depending on your internet connection to catch up. So I find that it's easier not to look at the page when I'm actually dictating, all right? Now you notice as well, I had to punctuate, right? So it doesn't just automatically throw that in for me. I actually have to punctuate, which is really good, especially for us that are working with students, all right? So when we're punctuating, you can see here, you can say the following phrases. You can say full stop, or you can say period, comma, question mark, exclamation point, exclamation mark, new line, new paragraph, semicolon, colon, open quote, close quote, etc. Now it's different to maybe some of the other tools that you used before, where you don't have to train this, okay? The more of us that use it through the world, the better it's going to get at hearing our voices, etc. But you don't have to set it up and train it. You just turn it on and you start using it, right? Now, you're going to find that as you use it more and more, you're going to realize how slow you need to speak or how fast you need to speak clearly, and these kinds of things as well. And some of you are going to ask me questions about, what about kids with speech impediments and all that kind of stuff. You're just going to have to get in there and have a go and see how it goes with those kids. But I found it's actually really, really, really good. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and, draw up a diagram and compare this to other dictate tools that you've used. You may find a combination of dictate tools, for different contexts is the way you want to go. But nevertheless, this is now native to Word and native to Word Online, which means you can start using it for free tomorrow and your students as well. So in terms of what we've got, okay, and where it lives, as I said, in terms of the desktop apps for Windows 10, it's in Word, it's in PowerPoint, it's in Outlook, and it's in OneNote, okay? But when we're talking about the online apps, it's in Word, it's in OneNote, and PowerPoint for the web, okay? So it's not everywhere, but certainly it's turning up in more and more places. Okay, now our last webinar, we looked at Immersive Reader. Okay, and Immersive Reader is a free tool that aids with independent reading and comprehension. Because it lives in so many different apps and platforms, it's helping readers with many of the different aspects of learning. There are features within this tool that make the text read out loud, break it into syllables, provide options for visual layout, such as spacing between the lines, letters and colours and themes. All right, so please go back and look at that earlier webinar. And again, I'll share that link with you at the end, where to access that. But you'll learn all about Immersive Reader. But why I'm bringing it up again today is because Immersive Reader is quite powerful in our assistance of writing. Because writing takes place when Immersive Reader is utilised in that it allows students to consume text with their visual preferences, as well as hear their own writing aloud. All right, so they can hear their own writing. So now students who can't see their errors for whatever reason, whatever challenge they're faced, they can actually hear their errors. And they can create revisions and edits with their own voice and then hear it read back to them through the entire process. So what I want to do for you is I want to show you how we would use Immersive Reader, okay, as a writing tool. So let me come up here. I'm going to take us into another document over here. So here's a piece of writing that I have done, right? Now I may have typed that in as a student. Let's just say I'm in year 7, I've done a bit of writing, I've typed it in, but I could still be using this with a stylus and then converting that to printed text using what's called ink to text, all right? But nevertheless, I've got it down, okay? And I can see there that Word is underlining a couple of things, but I'm not exactly sure the mistakes that I've made, all right? So what I can do is I can come up here to View, Immersive Reader. And those of you that are in my Immersive Reader workshop the other day will know that this is exactly how I left my Immersive Reader, so it could actually show me, so I can show you that it remembers who we are and our settings. But now as a student, I want to actually listen, all right, and see if I can hear my errors. So have a look.
Last week, Mum and my dad went to see a guy about fixing our dad. He was really expensive, about $300. So Dad decided to try another guy. Then we went to see him and he was cheaper.
Okay, so maybe a bit fast for a student trying to listen. All right, so we can slow that down. All right, and let's try it again.
Last week, Mum and my dad went to see.
All right, so I can already hear my instead of I or me or whatever I'm trying to say there.
A guy about fixing our dad. He was
fixing our gate. All right, so I can hear that that's not actually gate.
Really expensive, about $300.
Again, expensive, right? Etc. So I can listen for my errors. Now, the other thing about this, and you probably heard this when we were listening to it the first time, is you can actually train the student to listen to it and listen for the pausing because it's got a very natural sounding voice. Okay, so let's have a listen.
Last week, Mum and my dad went to see a guy about fixing our dad. He was really expensive, about $300. So Dad decided to try another guy. Then we went to see him and he was cheaper.
All right, so I would actually be training my student to listen to that and saying, where's the pauses, right? Where are the spaces, etc. And then talking to them about punctuation so they can go back into the original document, they can add their punctuation, make their changes, and then they can go back and listen to it and see if it plays back through them better. Okay, and also remembering that because we've got that Immersive Reader in there, we've got the ability also for translation. So students can actually translate some of their words back into their native language and make sure that they're using the right word and using the right definition as well. All right, so for those of you that missed that, if I have a word like fixing and I want to know, and I'm Japanese, for example, I can actually see it and hear it in English.
Fixing.
And see it.
Suri.
And hear it in Japanese. Okay, so then I can go back into my original document and make sure it is exactly what I wanted it to be. So that's how we use Immersive Reader to assist with writing. Now, the other thing we can do is we can combine those two. Okay, so the combination of dictation with Immersive Reader means the student can now write with a degree of independence not seen before. Students can dictate in their own voice and then use Immersive Reader to assist them in the editing and revising process. So we're just going to combine what we just saw a moment ago, right? So I want you to imagine now that I've got a year 7 student who's having trouble getting that onto the paper, all right? So they're onto the page. So for some reason they're unable to type or unable to write, or they're challenged or slow. The speed is not there to get that down in time. So we actually introduce them to the idea of using dictate again. Okay, so I'm going to click on dictate. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to turn that off because it recorded me. I will also show you before we do that the dictation settings are here as well, so you can actually get that going from there. But here we go. I'm going to do this as a student. Last week, me and me dad went to see a guy about fixing our fence. Full stop. He was really expensive. Full stop. About $300. Full stop. So dad decided to try another guy. Full stop. Then we went to see him and he was cheaper. Full stop. All right. So you can see there that because it's, you don't have to worry so much about spelling and things like that because it's actually using the voice. Okay. But now if I do want to listen to that, I can come back into my view tab, go into Immersive Reader, and I can listen to it played back to me.
Last week, me and my dad went to see a guy about fixing our fence. He was really expensive. About $300. So dad decided to try another guy. Then we went to see him and he was cheaper.
All right, so you can see there that the student that was possibly locked out of writing is now actually have that open to him without an aide or a teacher being available to him. So I think that's quite powerful. I get quite blown away. Sometimes I get goosebumps when I think about this stuff. All right, so let's talk now about dictate and read aloud in Outlook, okay? Because here's a scenario. I'm going to show you an email that this student got, okay? So this student got an email from me and it says, "Hi Tom, please note that tomorrow you're required to attend an online interview at 4 p.m. If you miss this meeting, you'll not be able to pass this unit. I will send a Teams meeting invite later tonight." Now, if that student is locked out of text, that important email, and especially in a secondary context, emails are going back and forth between teachers and students all the time. And if that student is locked out of that mode of communication, it's definitely going to impact their learning. So what we've got is inside Outlook. So this is just, you can see I'm in dark mode, but it's just the regular version of Outlook for Windows 10. But remembering, we want to make sure that we've got the updated version. And over here, I've got read aloud. So what that means is the student can actually have their email read to them if by chance they're unable to read it themselves.
Hi Tom. Please note that tomorrow you are required to attend an online interview at 4 p.m. If you miss this meeting, then you will not be able to pass this unit. I will send you a Teams meeting invite later tonight. Regards and thanks, Mr. Waller.
All right, so that's read to me. Now the student can then click reply. All right, and still inside Outlook, okay, now what they want to do, clicking on the ellipses over here, they're going to dictate. All right, now remembering you don't need to know where everything lives because you can actually find things up here using tell me. So if I look for dictate, there's dictate, comes up for me. All right, just there. But I'm going to open up dictate and I'm going to send an email. I'm going to pretend to be Tom. I'll just get rid of that because Tom is not me. And I'm going to pretend to send an email back to myself as a teacher. So here we go. Hi, Mr. Waller, new line. Thanks very much for your email. I'm looking forward to the interview tomorrow, full stop. I think it'll be great, full stop. Okay, so you can see there, got my name wrong, but basically the communication is there for the teacher and the student. So the student can now click send, and that email will be sent straight back to the teacher. So what was before, a student was unable to communicate directly with the teacher and receive those important announcements, now using something like Outlook, the student can actually start to use email just like everybody else in his or her class. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, so when we're supporting students to write, it's important that, and you know this as teachers, right? Fixing everything is not productive, but we want to encourage students to choose what's most important. Tackling everything at once, though, for them can be overwhelming. So we want tools that are going to let students self-assess their writing and clearly see what to work on. Now, you know this tool here, good old spell check, all right? So let's take a look at what some of the challenges students are going to face when trying to spell check a document. So you can see here, we've got the word in the text, which is underlined. So, we've got to teach kids what those things mean, right? What is a red squiggly line? What is two blue lines, etc. But they know that they're looking for spelling. But if I right click that, I get a drop down. Now, for kids that are challenged by things like dyslexia, that is going to be absolutely no help to them at all. Okay, because what spelling check software typically does is it shows a list of spelling suggestions, and when you right click or tap a flagged word, it drops down. And there's several reasons why people with things like dyslexia, for example, have trouble selecting a correctly spelled word from that list. First, they have difficulty perceiving the differences between similarly spelled words and determining which of them is correct. And this can be due to visual attention challenges, challenge remembering the spelling rules, absence of visual memory, tracing the correctly spelled word. So it didn't help that Office used to have spelling menus that only showed the suggestions without any context to help choose the right word. Second of all, having too many choices there slows the decision making and causes what's called decision fatigue. And this applies to everybody, but it's especially pertinent to young writers who have more difficulty with reading speed and accuracy and slower processing time, depending on what they're challenged by. And thirdly, unique spelling error patterns can cause words to look very different from the intended word, right? So if I type in a word, I might get suggestions that have nothing to do with the word that I'm actually looking for because I've spelled it so wrongly. So Office spell checkers have optimized to show a smaller number of highly likely suggestions for the most common error patterns. Therefore, it didn't have suggestions for the unusual patterns that maybe the student is using, all right? So what I'm trying to say is it's largely useless. But I want to show you what we've done now.
Sorry, I don't know that, but I do have a skill you might like.
There's Alexa talking to me. Alexa, stop. You can see there I'm across multiple platforms, even though I work for Microsoft. Okay, so let's jump in and have a look. So I'm just going to find my document that I have for you here, and that's this one here. Okay, so this student, Josh Smith in 7H, he's writing this article about the Pacific Northwest tree octopus. Now, if you don't know, there's no such thing, it's an internet hoax, but he's decided he's going to write this, and you can see his photograph there is really quite cool. Now, what happens for Josh, when he says here, he says, I could throw it at my principal to scare her, right? He can see that the word is misspelled. Now, as I said, once upon a time, you right click that, get a drop down, and you probably still do on your older version of Word, but now in this new version, when we right click, look what happens here. He gets a drop down and he's got 1, 2, 3, only 3 suggestions. So we're not overwhelming him. And underneath are synonyms. Okay, so not definitions, but synonyms to try to prompt him to be able to look at those and decide which one is more likely the word that he is looking for. However, he still may be unable to decode that. So what we've done is we've actually built read aloud into the drop down. So instead of having to read it and struggle, he can now have it read to him. Have a listen.
Principal, similar to, main, leader, superintendent.
All right, maybe that's the one. Sounds pretty good.
Principle, similar to, code, source, rule.
Okay, as soon as he finds the one that he wants, bang, he clicks on that and it'll change the word to principle. All right, now I'm just going to reverse that because I want to use it for my next demo. Okay, so we've chosen to show synonyms as opposed to definitions or usage samples because they're the most efficient at the level of reading. The fewest words are required to convey enough information to make a decision. And of course, less text is going to help the students, for example, because of something like visual crowding, which some students suffer from. That is, the more text, it starts to blur into each other, etc. So the less text that we give, the less of an issue it becomes for the students. We've also improved spelling suggestions themselves, and we're leveraging an online spell check engine, so again connected to the internet, which provides a larger language model and a phonetic spelling component that gives much better suggestions. All right, so that's really quite cool. Okay, so that's what we've done with spell check. And remembering, if yours isn't there, please go back and make sure that you download the latest greatest version of Office and also steer your students towards that as well. Okay, so we've got this thing called Editor. Now, Editor lives online and Editor also lives in our Windows 10 versions of our tools. Okay, so again, coming back to that document here, so our Year 7 student, Josh Smith, has got this onto paper and he's done really quite well. First thing I want to point out is you need to make sure that you teach the students what the symbols are. Okay, so you can see here that there only seems to be spelling errors in there, but if we come into the online version, yep, it's only the spelling errors that are in there. But if there were other lines, you know, double blue lines for grammar and things like that, then we can teach the kids what those mean, so that way they can start to know the error that they're actually looking to solve. Okay, so second thing I want you to notice is when I click on Editor, which lives up here. Okay, so this is where it lives in the online, sorry, in the installed version. Okay, you can see that what it's done here is actually saying there's 7 changes that I want you to make. Okay, and then it's given me 5 spelling errors in US English and only 2 spelling errors in Australian, right? So you can actually set that so that you've only got the one language coming through. All right, but it gives me a categorized overview of writing enhancements, right? So it's going to show me the corrections that I need to make for spelling, but it's also going to bring things like refinements in. So refinements are going to give optional advice on stylistic or situational matters. And then we've also got the ability to bring these counters here and these check marks to show us what it is that we need to fix. And when we fix them, it will actually, you know, give us that little bit of encouragement that we've done it. All right. So it's going to draw attention to elements of good writing. So it gives students this dashboard of self-assessment and it gives them a scorecard. All right, up here. So it gamifies it a little bit. All right. And that's going to, you know, help you to set your goals, etc. And it also presents a breadth and depth of checks in a manageable way. The flexible workflow choices let you spend time purposefully scrubbing the document one category at a time. All right, so I can do my spelling first, then my refinements, etc. All right, so that's what it looks like in there. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like in the browser as well. Okay, so here it is. Oops, sorry. So Editor in the browser, I'm going to take you up because, again, you don't need to have the full version installed to get a little bit of a picture of Editor. So I'm going to click on this here. Okay, now this is showing a little bit better for us because it's showing us those refinements and other things as well. I don't know why that didn't show up in my Windows 10 version. Sorry about that. But you can see here, look, it's actually given me a score. Okay, so it's saying, oh, not so great, right? 52%. And then it's showing me my spelling errors. It's saying I've got no grammar errors, but I do have these refinement errors. Okay, so for example, conciseness. So if I click on that, what it does is it actually brings me a little bit of a drop down. So instead of saying really, really close, it's saying just, oh, sorry, excuse me, instead of saying really, really close, it's saying why not just say really close. All right, so I can put that in there like that and it'll take me through and show me all those errors. Now you can see here it'll do things like formal language, punctuation conventions, vocabulary, inclusiveness, etc. All right, so it's really quite cool. Now, the other thing that you've got down here is you've got similarity. So it's a kind of plagiarism checker. So it'll check it against other online sources and see if your student has actually just cut and pasted as well. You can also set the proofing language inside the document in here, so you can set it just to Australian, as I said before. And the other thing you've got is you've got these stats. Okay, so it'll actually show you readability and also distinct words. Now, I want to share with you what that actually means. So the readability score is based on the Flesch Reading Ease score. A score of higher than 60 indicates short words and sentences. Most people find it easier to read that kind of writing. The number of distinct words that occur in the document, a high number indicates a larger vocabulary. Okay, so these are things that teachers and students can look at together, and they can you know, determine what is it that I need to work on, or what is it that we need to work on together. So you can get students to grab screen grabs of that in a remote context, but it's going to give them that help that once upon a time we needed to get from a teacher being in the room. All right, so that's editor and editor in the browser. Now let me take you through into word prediction. Now word prediction is way cool, because what we've done is, just like it on your mobile phone or some of your other devices where you start to type words, you actually get a prediction here, and it'll suggest words to you. Okay, now it's really easy to set up. Now I'm hoping that you guys can actually see this. I'm going to jump over and make sure that you guys can see this. So when I click on my when I click on my search button over here and I start to type in suggest words. Oh, sorry. I'm going to have to work out what the phrase is, because it's easy to remember as long as I keep this open. So show text suggestions. That's it. So I'm going to come back to here and I'm going to show text suggestions as I type. So just remember those words, show text, and then you click on that. And what it does, you'll have to forgive me, it's open down the bottom screen, so I'm just going to drag this up for you here. It brings you into the typing and keyboard area of Windows 10. So remember, this is for Windows 10. And I come down here and I click on here, show text suggestions as I type. Okay. And you can also autocorrect misspell words as you type if you want to put that in as well. But I'm just going to show text suggestions as I type. I'm going to come back into my document here. I'm just going to come down beneath my photograph, because I want to show you what happens. If I start to type, the man was a pro. Now, as I start to type, you can see that it's starting to make suggestions. So the closer I get, eventually, I'm going to find, there it is, there's my word producer, all right? So it'll start to make suggestions to me. And again, really easy to turn that on and off. What we do is we come down here into our settings. Oops, excuse me. We come into our settings down here. I'm just trying to get that to work for us, guys. There we go. We come into here to search, and I remember I just said show text, and as I start to do that, it'll bring it up. And then I come down into my settings, come down into hardware keyboard and turn that on, okay? And the cool thing is that now works for the Australian language and Australian spelling as well, okay? So I'm going to make these slides available to you, and so it'll actually give you a bit of a record of where to go and how to find those. All right. Now, next thing I want to talk about is the immersive reader in the desktop app. So we've looked at immersive reader in the online version of Word, okay? But you probably noticed, even though I said in our last session, I talked to you about, yes, there's a version of it in the desktop version of Word, but I kind of skipped over it. Now, the reason why is because in terms of, this is my personal opinion, in terms of reading, I actually think that the online version of Immersive Reader is much better. But when we come to writing, I think now that the Windows 10 version is far superior for writing. And let me show you why. So again, it lives in the view, or I can search for it up here, but it lives in view, and here it is, Immersive Reader. Now look what happens when I click this, okay? Already you can see it's very different to the original Immersive Reader that we saw before. I can still change my column width. I can change my page color. I can also have line focus 1, 3, and 5. I can increase and decrease my spacing, and I can syllabify. All right. But what's missing is there's no picture dictionary, there's no parts of speech, and there's no translation. Okay. But I still have my read aloud. All right. So that's in there as well. But the cool thing about this is it keeps the pictures inside, whereas the other one didn't. And I can now edit inside that immersive reader experience, right? So what that means is, unlike the other one, see I see it here, the man was a producer. I can actually change that and be typing as I go, etc. All right, and I've still got those suggestions, but inside that immersive reader experience. I hope I'm making sense. The other version, we had to jump out of immersive reader, make our changes, and then go back in. Whereas inside here, even though I haven't got all the features, all the bells and whistles, it's better for writing because I can actually see my changes and I can edit in the immersive reader environment. All right, but remembering it'll still read aloud for me, so have a look at this.
The Pacific Northwest Tree Octopus by Josh Smith 7H.
Okay, and I can change
the Pacific Northwest Tree octopuses are from rainforests on the west.
If I want to. All right, so that can be done in there as well. All right, so again, no picture dictionary, no parts of speech, no translation, but it's much better for writing. And remembering you can run both versions at the same time. So if I'm wanting to use it as a reading tool, I can have that same document. Look, there's all the changes I made in the online, and I can be looking at that in immersive reader with the online version. But when it comes time to writing, I can come back and jump into this version here, all right, inside Windows 10. So I really want to stress, yes, it exists in both. Yes, it's different in both, the online and the desktop app. However, I think that the desktop app for Windows 10 is actually better for writing. When I close Immersive Reader, look at that, it takes me back to the original document. All right, now you know what? I think I'm just looking here at time and I know we're about to run out of time. So I'm going to hold off on the maths today, guys. I know I made promises that I was going to do it. So we're definitely going to have a third workshop where we're going to come back in and play around with the maths tools. But for now, I'm just going to show you some of the other things that I think are important before we open up for Q&A. First thing I want to point out to you, aka.ms/SPED, special education. That is a link for you to our new page, special education accessibility resources for remote learning. All right, this is not just about remote learning though. This is probably the best page that I've seen in my time at Microsoft for special education and accessibility tools. Everything is there on this page, right, or on this group of pages. So please jump in and have a look at that. The other thing is empower students with inclusive writing tools. This is a walkthrough. So again, I'm just going to hide that there for you. aka.ms/inclusive writing demo. This will actually take you through and show you in a very step-by-step fashion how to use a lot of the writing tools that we have looked at today. I'm going to skip over the maths one. I'm also going to share with you today the Microsoft Learning Tools availability page. Now, this graphic here shows you what's available in what tools on what platform, whether you're on a Mac or an iPad or the desktop or the web, all the different features, what's available to you right across there. So you can jump in and have a look at that when I make that available to you. There's a course on the Educator Centre called Empower Every Student with an Inclusive Classroom. We're going to take you through immersive reader, dictate, spelling, all those kinds of things which we looked at today and last time. I want you to jump in there and have a look at those. Okay, I might actually open up for questions now because I've got a feeling there's probably one or two that have come in that time. So how are we going there, Jess?
Yeah, we've got a couple that are around accessibility and a couple that are around professional development. So we'll start with the accessibility ones. Yep. We've got a great one from Amy who's digging into the editor tool, and she's asked, does the editor have advanced spell check and have the capacity to give synonyms and other elements of good writing?
Yeah, good one. So I forgot to draw that to your attention. The editor online doesn't bring down the synonyms and doesn't have the read aloud yet. All right, give it some time. I'm hoping that that's on the roadmap, that's going to come along. So it's not as feature laden as the desktop app yet, but those features I hope are coming soon, but I haven't got an ETA for you.
Sounds good. We had another question around the captioning tool. It seems that it's not switched on for everyone at present. Do you have any information on that?
When you say captioning, do you mean the dictate?
The live captioning in Microsoft Teams, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Again, that's probably not a conversation that we're going to have now. But that tool, it should be there. The captioning inside when you turn it on to start a Teams meeting. But my suggestion is to reach out to your IT guys. When I say guys, I mean guys and girls, and see if they can actually help you with making sure that that's switched on. I don't have an answer for you why it's not showing up, and that's probably something you need to reach out to your techies for.
No worries, thank you. We might jump to a couple of the questions around professional development. So one was accessing the Educator Centre. If we're able to do that, to go through those learning paths without a .edu address.
Yes, definitely. Anybody can sign up as long as you're over 18. As long as you've got an email address, you can sign in. You will probably need to create a Microsoft account, which takes about 30 seconds, but that's all explanatory when you go in and try and sign up.
Great. One around professional development. And if this particular training session that you've hosted, Troy, will contribute to professional development, if there's a document that can be accessed.
So within the Educator Centre, it won't be recorded, but if you keep your email invite that you would have got from Eventbrite, that will actually be enough proof to the teacher registration boards around the country that you attended this webinar. So keep that as your certificate.
Excellent. And I think we have one more. I'll just double check. Yes, a question around the inclusive writing demonstration, and if parents would be able to access that, not just teachers.
Yep, definitely. So remembering that we've made, I've shown you how to download the latest, greatest version of Microsoft Office onto your machine. Students can do that as well. Okay, so that means that the student has got that on their home machine and they can share it with their family members. The other thing to remember is that the student can still log in to Office 365 online, and their parents can be using the student login and email address if that's what they want to do, or the parent can actually open a free Microsoft account and go to live.com, and you'll get not as many apps as we get in Office 365, but you'll get Office Online, and that's free to everybody. I hope that made sense.
Excellent. I think that's about all at the moment that we've got questions.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I want to take you through this series of links here. So these are in the slides that I've got for you. So we've got the Disability Answers Desk, the Microsoft Accessibility YouTube channel, giving your feedback, etc., etc. So when you get these slides, you can click on those links and they will take you to these pages. But I want to take you through and show them to you. The first one is the Disability Answers Desk. Now, a lot of people don't know that this even exists. You can actually access our webinars, but if you scroll down, we've got this 1-800 number here. Now look at this, from 9 AM to 9 PM and 10 AM to 6 PM, you can ring that 1-800 number. Any questions you have around Windows accessibility or Office accessibility, there will be a person on the end of that call who will help you. Now, I want to stress, they're not technical experts, so they're not going to be able to help you with your issues around things that aren't working, etc. It's not a help desk. What it is it's specifically questions around disabilities and using the Windows and Office tools in an accessibility way. There's also a 24/7 chat line that you can actually have a chat with a real person, but again, best one is just to make that phone call. So whether you're at home or when you go back to school, 9 AM to 9 PM, ring up, someone will be on the end of that line and they can talk to you. That's free for everybody. All right, so everyone can access that. Now, the other one I want to share with you is on YouTube, Microsoft MSFT Enable, which is our accessibility arm. They have a series of videos all about how to do amazing stuff with the Microsoft Office and Microsoft Windows platforms. So please jump in there. If you're on YouTube, just look up MSFT Enable. We would like to hear from you. Okay, so if you have feedback on anything to do with accessibility and disabilities, etc., with our tools, come back to here. It's microsoftaccessibility.uservoice.com. Remember, I've given you the links though in those slides, and you can actually post your ideas and suggestions, look at other people's suggestions and vote for those. The higher the votes, the quicker that's actually going to get worked on. All right, so that's another really cool thing for you to have your voice. And I was talking with some guys who work in this space, and they said the first thing they do every morning is they check user voice, right? They check and see what have people said, what are the suggestions, because it's the best way for them to see what's working and what needs to be changed, etc. MSFT Enable, MSFT Accessibility are on Twitter. So MSFT Enable, if you want to follow them, really, really good, worth doing. The other thing is the Ability Hacks, which is a great book about the development of immersive reader, and also the eye gaze software, which they've facilitated as well. Really, really nice, really nice stories. And again, I said a moment ago, but this special education website as well, really great stuff, whether you're in a remote learning environment or not, really worth getting in and having a look. Okay, we are on the home stretch. So I want you to redefine what's possible in your school, whether we're in a remote access or whether we're back at school. I want you to spread the word about Immersive Reader and the rest of our tools. I want you to tell students, teachers, aides and ES staff, support professionals, principals, parents and caregivers, right? Tell everybody about this stuff, that it's free, that it's available, it's been paid for. And then I want you to, really start using this, because otherwise it just becomes another webinar. But yeah, okay, that's great. But if you start to apply it, hopefully, you'll see some real changes. That's us for our newsletter. If you want to connect with us, aka.ms/MEC newsletter. Couple more links for you to access. But here's the important one. If you've got a pen, write this down. If you want to get the slides and recordings for today's webinar and all our webinars so far, aka.ms/DET webinars, and that's where you get the slides and the recordings. Last but not least, I would love you to connect with me on social media. These are totally Microsoft Education related accounts. I don't use this in a personal way. So you can follow me on Twitter. There I am on Twitter. Look me up on LinkedIn and look me up on Facebook as well, or you can type those in if you want to, and just add me. And then what I'll do is I'll grab all that great accessibility stories and updates to apps and things like that. I'll throw all that out onto my feeds, and if you're following me, then you don't need to know, you don't need to go hunting for it. It'll all be there waiting for you. Okay, so that's it, guys. I really hope that you got a lot out of this today. As I said, it's very near and dear to my heart. Remember, there's the slides and the recordings again. If you've missed it, my first webinar, please jump back and get the recordings and have a look at that one. So that's it from me and Jess. I really appreciate you guys coming along, and I really hope that you're surviving and getting through this time. And please reach out to me if there's anything I can do. Bye-bye.